Today's conversation is with Zane Sparks, a police officer from Anderson, Indiana. I'd like to welcome you to the Burnout Podcast. I am your host, Skip O. The episode is brought to you by Bridges of Hope of Madison County and mypodcast.media. I'd like to talk a little bit about Bridges of Hope. Bridges of Hope is here in Anderson, Indiana. They have a program for first responders. It's called the Warrior's Pathway to Recovery. The reason I like Bridges of Hope, they're very family-oriented. It's a small treatment facility with a big heart, and they help first responders from all over the United States. They allow other first responders peer support groups to go in and help them, and they also let us take the first responders out to support meetings outside their facility. If anybody's struggling out there and they need somebody, this is the place to go. To get a hold of Bridges of Hope, you can go to bhoperehab.com. That's the letter B, hoperehab.com. To call them by phone, you can call 833-411-0864. That's 833-411-0864. For our next sponsor, mypodcast.media. My experience with our Burnout Podcast is, Sean, the recordings go real well. He coaches you through the recordings. We do several takes to make sure we get it right. We have a good time. We have fun. As far as what Sean says, he's very timely. When he says he's going to do something, he does it. If you want to start a podcast or your business wants to do some advertising through your own podcast, get a hold of Sean. Let him jumpstart you. You can contact Sean on mypodcast.media. Now let me give you some background about our guest before we get started. Zane Sparks is a 14-year veteran on the Anderson Police Department. Zane is 37 years old and married with 3 kids. Zane also was on the SWAT team for 7 years as the SWAT Operator. Could you give the people out there a little background about yourself?
I work for the Anderson Police Department. It's been 14 years. This is going on my 15th year. I'm a Anderson, Indiana native. So everybody out there that knows Anderson, Indiana, you probably know me a little bit. But I'm married. I got 3 kids. I got a daughter that's 7, another daughter that's 5, and I got a son that will be turning 2 in about a month. So I've been like I said, a police officer for 14 years, going on 15 this year. SWAT operator for about 7, going on 8 years. I was a former field training officer, a patrolman for 13 years, and I just recently took a position in community policing, and I run the court system through Anderson City Court. I'm a firearms instructor, and I do a little bit of honor guard stuff too.
Wow, is there something you don't do? Sounds like you do it all.
Yeah, well, it feels that way sometimes, but you know what? I enjoy my job. I enjoy my time through the Anderson Police Department. There's nothing better to work at a police department that I grew up around. My father was a former chief of police, and which was Zane Sparks, and I got to follow in his footsteps. And my dad was about a 30-year police officer, so very blessed and thankful to follow in his footsteps.
Well, Zane, I tell you, that's kind of a tradition of first responders. Sometimes police, fire, the family members, they follow their parents' footsteps sometimes. But you growing up, watching your dad going to work, coming home, hearing some of his stories, did that worry you when he went to work? Did you have any comprehension when you was younger how dangerous the job was?
I knew how bad it was when I was younger, especially with my father. My father was shot in the line of duty back in 95. So I was 9 years old. I remember like it was yesterday. A friend of the family came because my mother actually went to the hospital, got God bless her, she went to the hospital, and us kids were still at home. And she went to the hospital because she had heard my dad had been injured in the line of duty or had been shot in the line of duty. And one of our good friends of the family walked in our door and said, "Hey, we got to go to the hospital because your dad had been shot in the line of duty." And so I remember, being 9 years old, being woke up and going to St. Vincent ER and walking into the hospital to see my father had been shot. And the crazy thing was the individual that had shot my father was in the room next to him. So, yeah. Yeah, so I walked in to see my father, and he was fine, but he was stable at the time. And I remember seeing my father. He's probably feeling pretty good at that time because they probably had a little bit of morphine in him, making him feel a little bit better.
That makes everything better.
Yeah, especially when you're shot, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm not kidding you. I remember looking over into the next room and seeing the suspect that had shot my father is in the next room.
What was going through your mind when you looked at that? I know it probably wasn't good stuff, but what was your feelings on that?
My dad was like Superman to me. So when I walked in to see that he was injured, he didn't bat an eye. He looked at me and greeted me as soon as I walked in the door. And it's funny because I can remember like it was yesterday. And he just said, "Hey, Zane." But like I said, he's probably a little feeling pretty good on morphine at the time.
I think that's what parents do, especially it sounds like your dad. He wasn't too worried about himself, but when he's seen your face, he's trying to make you feel comfortable with what it sounds like.
Yeah, it's crazy because he had his arm elevated. They just had it like in a device. And I could clearly see a bullet hole on his arm. And his uniform was in a big plastic bag, and it was covered in blood. Sorry, guys.
It's okay. That's what for us first responders sharing emotions. That's called growth.
Yeah.
I think the old days and a lot of times even today for some first responders, they think we can't share emotions. We're human beings. And you got somebody laying on a gurney that just got shot and recalling that sometimes that what you just recalled, that's going to bring emotions up. Not saying we hadn't dealt with them, but it's going to bring emotions up. And it just shows what kind of character you are, Yeah, I think you got good DNA.
I appreciate that.
Kind of going from there, Zane, like you seen your dad, you seen the suspect, and the aftermath when you knew your dad was going to be okay and he got home. What did you witness being young and seeing your dad go through all that? Was there any changes in your dad after that?
Not so much, you know how it is. Like you go through a traumatic incident like that, and he actually jumped back pretty quick and was back to work pretty quickly. And I remember the media and stuff like that. I remember him being on the news quite a bit. And it was kind of crazy because he went back to work probably a little bit quicker than what you'd probably expect. The crazy thing is like just like I said, you go into the hospital, you see him, he could have easily lost his life, and he didn't bat an eye. he went right back to work, which he knew that he needed to do eventually, but probably a little bit quicker than what he probably needed to. And I didn't see too much of a crazy change through. My dad wore it pretty well. You know, it's funny because I'm looking at a picture right now in his living room, and he's in a sling, and he was deer hunting with my sister and killed a big buck that year, and he's literally in a sling from when he was shot.
That's awesome. I know, I know your dad, and I tell you what, when somebody's a hunter and they want to go hunting, it doesn't matter what's going on with them; they're going to go hunt.
Now that does it for the first half of our interview today. Let's take a quick break, and we're going to go to Mellissa in Georgia. She's a firefighter there, and she's going to bring us our mental health moment. And then we'll be right back with the second half of today's interview.
Hey guys, my name is Mellissa, and I will be bringing you the mental health tip for today. So today's comes from a quote, and this quote is, "Grow through what you go through." And I think it sounds simple, and you might even find it cheesy. But honestly, it's something we can apply for everything we've seen as a first responder. And for those of you who are supporting first responders, it's something you can help your significant other or friend go through as well. A lot of the things we see are not very good. We're there for special moments that are amazing, but we're also there for end-of-life moments or traumatic instances. And sometimes we don't always process everything right away because we've learned to compartmentalize at work. We've also learned to compartmentalize at home because our home life and our work life are two separate things, and we do our best to be two different people, basically. So oftentimes we don't spend a lot of time reflecting or have time to ourselves to work through some of those things. And I would encourage you to really work on growing through what you went through, because how you do it is going to impact the next person that comes underneath you. And it's also going to set an example for those around you. So take time to either write down an experience that's been bothering you or talk with someone about it. And remember that as you get through it, things will get better, and then you can apply that to the next situation. All right, Skip, back to you.
Well, Zane, I tell you, you said your dad would come home. You could see he'd wear it on his face, and you seen him sharing stories when he'd come home with you. Then you seen him on a hospital gurney shot, and then you seen all the other stuff that comes with it. Your dad with the job. What finally flipped the switch, saying, "I want to be a police officer"?
My two older sisters, it affected them a lot. For me, it was like fuel to a fire. I didn't understand why such violence would be committed, towards another individual. And for me, it just made me think, I loved where I came from. I grew up in Anderson, and I was like, if I could make a difference and I could become a police officer, and that I know that we can't change everybody, but I knew that if I could change just the slightest person in any way, shape, or form, that I knew that I was doing something.
Sure. Let's fast forward it just a bit. So you went through the academy, you did your ride-alongs, and your first week of you in the squad car yourself. What was that like? Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. I remember the first day I was obviously in field training, and I chased a guy into a house, took a guy down at gunpoint. He had felony warrants, and we literally chased him into another individual's house, which meaning for people outside looking in, I literally chased a guy into another person's house that they didn't even know the guy. He runs into their house, and we take him down at gunpoint. He literally just forced entry into their house. And I walked outside, and I said, what the hell am I getting myself into? I was like, is every day like this on the job? Because that's crazy. And I've been a cop's son my entire life. My dad had been shot in the line of duty. I'm not kidding you. I had no idea what I was getting myself into until that day.
Being on the fire department with me, a lot of law enforcement, it's changed quite a bit, that would show up at overdoses, show up at different scenes, show up on mental health crisis. I know from talking to you in the past, you've had one of those where you had to unfortunately show up on one of those scenes that you knew somebody.
Yeah, so the first thing that always pops up in that area was I had a kid I went to high school with. He was a friend, not the closest friend, but you know how it is. You grow up in the city that you live in. You're going to deal with people that obviously you grew up around, went to school with. We got a call on the east side of town, which was in the area that it was at. It was pretty uncommon because it wasn't a familiar area for shootings and stuff. And upon arrival, we had a guy walk around the corner of his house with a handgun in his hand. And at first, we thought it was more in a threatening manner towards us. And then it turned to a possible suicidal situation. And like I said, it was an individual that I knew, I recognized, that I was very familiar with, that I actually had recently talked to in the last couple months prior to that incident. Former military guy, and he was having some PTSD. And I think that he had been out with his buddies having a couple drinks that night, and he had an incident. And when we showed up, he decided that he was going to take his life. And we had a standoff with him. We tried to talk with him, and he shot himself in front of us, about 20 feet away from us.
Man, that's sad, Zane. Sorry you had to go through that stuff. Those are tough ones to do. And, you know, for you, I think, for the police department that I see, you know, you got that one, and then you got to go leave that tough scene to somebody that was close to you or that you knew, and then you go to the next call, and then there's the next call, and then there's the next call. How do you personally dealt with that scene and others like it? Where's your outlet at? How do you deal with it yourself?
My first outlet is God. You know, I'm Catholic. I was raised Catholic. I was raised underneath the church. I truly don't see how people don't go through life without having Jesus Christ in their life. Because I can tell you hands down, through those very hard times, if I didn't have him, if I didn't have God in my life, I don't know where I'd be, because I'm just a rockhead, man. You know, I'm a rockhead police officer. This is who I am. You know, I'm just a country boy. I like hunting, fishing, doing all those things, but I wouldn't have all that if it wasn't for God. So, and obviously my second thing is, you know, I would always go to my father about hard times, but my wife has helped me through the really hard times too. So if I didn't have her, I don't know where I'd be at.
That's good. I think a lot of people, first responders, you know, they don't, as far as the faith and stuff, they struggle with that. And it seems like more people that don't have any kind of spirituality, they struggle a little bit harder. Have you seen the department itself grow as far as working with officers with mental health and doing crisis interventions?
We do a lot of debriefing stuff whenever it comes down to that. There's a group of individuals that will come in, and it's either active police officers, but and I know that some of them are active, but I don't I don't think that all of them are active, but anytime that we have a very like a big incident, or something really crazy happen, or we have a shooting, or we have an incident where officers involved, we do a debrief. Chaplain will come in, which is great, and my father was one of the reasons for that, to bring the chaplains in, to get them involved. And we sit down, we talk about it, and it's kind of like a little miniature therapy session, And it's funny that you mentioned that, because probably one of my worst years back in 2012, and that was the year that got shot. He was, like I said, the close friend of the family. The same year that, my buddy that I told you about had shot himself in front of me and a few of my other close friends on the job. And it was, I'm not kidding you, that year, what stands out in my mind, I literally have that year tattooed on my body, because it it was a crazy year. We had a lot of stuff going on. And with that being said, the chaplains had seen a few of us, and they looked at us like, we're tired of seeing you guys. I mean, it was one of those years that they were like, boys, we're seeing you guys too much. Like, what's going on? And it was just, it was a bad year,
For yourself, it sounds like you're handling it well. And being where you're at now, being, out in the community, and also, being a mentor of young recruits coming on, is there some suggestions you give the recruits as far as the mental health, or to be cautious about, or like a lot of us try to be Superman or think we're stone, we're invincible. Do you notice, is there a change how you guys bring up the new recruits today?
Not so much a change, any chance I get to talk to the new recruits, in which I have, the first question that I always have for them is, where are you at in your faith? And I ask them, if you don't have it, you need to find it. This job isn't normal. It is far from normal. And I try to explain that to people, as a 14-year police officer. I look at people and I go, there's nothing normal about being a police officer. And what I mean by that is, the things that you see, the things that you endure, you're dealing with other people's problems. You're not only dealing with other people's problems, but you're also seeing the worst things that people can ever imagine. I try to give them guidance in the areas of, have people you can talk to always, if that's a loved one, if that's a friend, if that's a priest, if that's you know what I'm saying? Like, if that is a pastor, anybody that you can talk to, then you need to talk to them, because if you don't, you're just going to build those things up. The other thing is you got to be close with each other on the road. This is a brotherhood, and you're seeing that slowly fade away. You got more cliquey stuff going on that I've noticed, and you got too many guys that want to stay in one clique, and somebody else wants to stay in the other. And for me, when I first was brought into this police department, it was still the same way that my father had. You had brothers, you had sisters that were out there on the road with you. You took care of each other. If you needed something, you talked to them, you figured stuff out. So I tell them that, for one, I tell them if they need anything to reach out to me. If they ever have a question, don't be scared to ask it. And failure is the only way of growth. There's that everybody worries about failing. And I look at POs, I look at these probationary officers that are fresh on the street, and they're so scared to death to fail. I said, that's part of your training. Don't worry about failing. just don't try to make too many mistakes, the same mistakes, over and over again. And don't fail at the things that is, critical to your safety and other individuals' safety. So
You got a lot of experience to share with people, and I appreciate that you're doing that. And it sounds like you're, approaching the new recruits and making sure they're where they need to be. There's somebody out there right now, whether he's in the military, law enforcement, first responder, firefighter, that's lost. They might have an addiction problem, going to drink. They might just be sitting in the room by themselves and have that far off stare, and they need help. What would you tell them?
I've seen it. I've seen it in family. I've seen it in individuals that I love and care about. I've seen it on the road. I've seen it in people that are former military guys that revert back to drinking, and they feel like they don't have anything left in life, and they don't have too many people that support them. And I would just tell them to seek help and always understand that there is a creator in life, and that's Jesus Christ, that's God. And I became a police officer to make a difference. I didn't become a police officer to make a bunch of money, because obviously I don't. And I can tell you right now, if I didn't have God in my life and I didn't have individuals that surrounded me, always surround yourself with people that that can, for one, always be there for you, and that if you need to talk to them, to seek out to people and talk to them. You have to talk to people about your problems. If you got a drinking problem, you got an addiction problem, you need to seek out for help. There's always another day, because if you feel like there isn't, there is. You got to live day by day, because if you sat there and worry about the past, then you don't have anything to look forward to. So always reach out to people, always talk to people. If you have people that you can't talk to, then seek people that you can talk to, because there's always somebody out there that cares.
That's right. Well, Zane, I always ask this of the guests. Is there a quote or a scripture or something when you have trouble, you're struggling, that always resonates in your mind, pops up, that comes through your mind when one of those situations comes up?
Biggest thing that pops up in my mind, and I'm a religious person, but the biggest thing that pops up in my mind is, you know who Jocko is?
No, I don't.
He's a former special forces guy.
Okay.
And he does his own podcast. And he talks about an individual that is one of his former operators that come to him about some of his problems. And he said every time that this individual would come to me, about his issues, he would say, "Good." And he goes, "What do you mean good?" And he goes, "Well, every time you talk to me, you tell me that you just say good. Like if I got a problem or something, you always tell me good." And the reason behind that he says good, is because he would always make sure that they understand that even though every bad issue that they come across, there's always something good that can come from it. You're having a bad day, you can find something good that comes from that day.
Well, Zane, thank you very much for coming on here and sharing your wisdom and your experience. And I'd like to thank everybody for listening. And if you need to contact us, you can go to burnoutpodcast.org and you can reach us there. If you need some help, we can connect you with some help. If you'd like to talk to Zane more on a one-on-one, just email us there and we'll give him the information. Remember, the Worldwide Peer Support, they have support Zoom meetings for first responders Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays at 6 or 8 p.m. Eastern. And then the Burnout Podcast has their support meeting at 6 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. You can go to either website and you can find those support meetings. But I appreciate everybody that's listening. And remember, when you go home tonight, shut your phone off, shut your scanner off, and get some sleep. Thank you.